Okay, I'm on to another subject, which is a really a bit of an interesting curveball subject. So let's see what we can bring to the table here. The myths about deal registration. We hear a lot about myths. We hear about exclusivity. We hear about competition law. We hear about my channel's not ready. We perhaps hear that people perceive it as a land grab. So what I'd like to do is John, I'd like you to kick off first with some of the particular areas I know you've had some focus on these past few weeks. So perhaps you'd like to share your insights first.
Yeah, and I'll pick some of it up as just from personal experience, JB. I'll pick one that came up. You mentioned is about is deal registration allowed in Europe? Now, the origin of that, I was asked to set up an EMEA channel for a North American technology company about 7 years ago, and deal reg was offered in North America and some parts of Asia, but was not offered in Europe. And there was this perception in the company that under EU competition law, you could not offer deal reg. Now, the reality is every company, every tech company that I'd worked with had been European headquartered, and we absolutely did offer deal registration. So some of the myths are based on, again, and this is probably more for companies that are looking to scale out of their home market into international markets, is, let's bust these myths, talk to people that are already in that market and get your experience. But the reality is most vendors face competition. So if we take the world that AJ lives in and Kate lives in, and even Channel Mechanics, you're very unlikely to be in a monopoly or such an innovative thought leader product position that you're the only player in the market. So bottom line is you absolutely can offer deal registration. It's an extremely common table stakes program, as we mentioned, in the European region. The other area then is exclusivity. Again, I've heard this again, that because we offer exclusivity, we only have one partner per territory or one partner per region. We don't need to offer deal registration. And I said, look, that's only one of the very minor, hopefully people have heard this today, that's only one of the very minor benefits that some people get from it. One of the big things is if you don't have your exclusive partners sharing their early deal reg pipeline with you, you're going to be starved of that visibility that we talked about. So I would certainly encourage, if you do offer exclusivity, and that's perfectly fine, please encourage your exclusive partners to register deals to give you that visibility of seeing what's coming into your forecast. And I say that one of the audiences that I love as a channel person, not everybody does, is finance teams. Finance teams, finance leaders absolutely hate surprises. They hate when you miss your forecast, negatively, but they absolutely hate that if you come in with a deal that they had no visibility of and maybe elevated your revenues. Finance people like predictability, which comes from visibility.
Thank you, John. AJ, I know you've had some experience and some exposure to exclusivity, so perhaps you can build upon John's points pertaining to exclusivity, please.
Sure. Yeah, and John did cover most of the important ones there, and they primarily do surround visibility. But most of the benefits we've talked about up to this point about the value of deal registration still applies with exclusivity. For example, again, forecasting and it being the leading indicator. Without question, deal registration is the #1 KPI that we track with regard to our channel for multiple reasons, right? We can look at the health of the pipeline building that's going on, if there's any, being ahead of any concerns. And then on the other side of it, the visibility is two ways. So the partner will also have visibility. They can go in and see their pipeline of deal registrations that are approved. So you don't have to send that to them in a spreadsheet where they go, hey, are you aware of these opportunities that we have here? And another thing that we track as a company is the contribution of the partner versus if you have an exclusive agreement with a partner, anything you receive inbound, if a customer calls you up, you're going to be handing that opportunity over to the partner. Typically, that's part of an exclusive agreement. You can then track the contributions of the partner versus the vendor, which is something we look at very closely. And then you can constantly assess the value of that partner's contributions. If they're closing a lot of business, but it's all business that you're funneling to them, you might not necessarily have that visibility if you're not tracking it through some sort of deal registration program. So I would encourage that, whether or not there's exclusivity, to have a deal reg program in place.
Thank you, AJ. Thanks for that. Thanks for adding to that important subject. Kate, do you wish to add to any of these points that have been raised so far?
Not really. I mean, the exclusivity piece is, I mean, hopefully you will grow one day to not only have a few partners, but more and more and more, right? And then it will become even more helpful to have a deal reg program. So maybe start early.
Indeed. And guys, you know, there's lots of case law out there. There's lots of studies from a legal perspective regarding monopolistic behavior. And I know John mentioned it, and it was in the midst of his conversation regarding monopolies. It's very rare to find anyone in a monopolistic behavior and argue the point that either they can control a market, they can manipulate the market, or they can work together with a number of specific other vendors to create any sort of cartel behavior. So if we think deal registration creates and drives monopolistic behavior, or it allows you to create some sort of cartel behavior, which are things that are absolutely, you know, frowned upon and do fall foul of regulatory authorities, I really don't think that deal registration sits in that area as being something which, you know, breaches any of these regulations, be it EU, North American, or any other part of the world. So thanks for that, guys. It's an interesting subject. There is no right answer, but there are all variations as to how we interpret it. But ultimately, I think by virtue of the fact that this is immensely popular as a solution for your channel partners, and just by virtue of what we as a vendor in that space are seeing in the marketplace, I think these sort of myths are really something that we can not really use as a success criteria or a decision-making criteria. Brenda, I'm thinking now that we move straight on to the 5th topic and we run a poll after topic number 5. Is that okay with you?
That's perfect. And I know we already have a lot of interest in this from a couple of questions that have come in so far. So yeah, this one is in relation to KPIs. So which KPIs do you use to track the success of your deal reg program via the channel? Would it be the number of deal regs submitted per quarter or per year, the number of closed won deal regs per quarter or per year, the revenue value of closed deal regs, the net new logos won from deal reg, and of course, if you don't currently offer a deal registration program?